Alright guys, so we are back in my garage for another video, and today we are going to be installing the BimmerNetwork heat shield on my BMW 340i. I'm really excited to try out this part because it's going to help improve the heat management in my engine. As you guys have seen from my videos, I'm pushing a good amount of power, I track my car, and so I just want to make sure that I keep everything in the engine bay as cool as possible, and especially because the turbo is the main thing generating heat, this will give me a nice opportunity to protect all the auxiliary components in the engine bay. So a big shout out to BimmerNetwork for sending this out to me for some testing. I will have a link down in the description if you guys are interested in buying it for your own B58 powered vehicle. Let's go ahead and hop into the video. Hopefully you guys find this useful. Now, as always, for everybody that's new to the channel, I create these videos to help keep you updated on the latest developments in our community, as well as discuss technical topics so that we have a better understanding of how our engines work. So if you're interested in more videos like that, be sure to subscribe because there will be a lot more coming out in the future. Now what we're going to do first is get some baseline measurements on the car. So I've just done a bunch of pulls, and we're going to take some temperature measurements on the different components in the engine bay to see where we currently are. So let's take a look at what we find. All right, so what we're going to do is use this temperature gun. You can basically point it at different parts, and it's hard to see, but there's like a red laser that shows what it's pointing at. So I can basically see the temperature of different components on the car. So here you see the intake is around 80 degrees. The intake pipe is around 85, 86 degrees. My charge pipe is 100. Yeah, kind of depending on what spot. It's between 100 and 120. Let's see, how about the turbo? This is the cylinder 1 runner. It's over 400 degrees. The main center runner on the turbo is over 500, 550. And then the heat shield, let's see, right between cylinder 3 and 4, that's around 270, 280. Back here by the high pressure fuel pump, it's like 170, 175. And then up here by cylinder 1, I can't get it on here really good. Hopefully that's consistent. Yeah, around 230. And then let's look at some of this wiring. So on our O2 sensor, that's 230, 200, yeah, 200, 220. Downstream is around 175. Let's see some of this wiring over here. 180 or so. Sorry, it's a little chilly, so I'm shaking a little bit. What about my intake manifold? Is over 100 degrees on the metal. 104. Come on, focus. There we go. And then let's just look at the valve cover itself. So the valve cover is 146, 145, 140, somewhere around there. So now we're ready to remove the stock heat shield, and you can kind of see it here. It's sandwiched between the turbo and the valve cover, so it's this thin piece of metal, and it's held onto the cylinder head with 5 screws. So if you ankle down a little bit, you can see one of the screws right here, and there are 5 screws along the length of the cover. So you can see one here, there's one there, another one kind of in the middle behind these O2 sensor plugs, and then 2 more towards the back of the heat shield. So we're going to remove all of these screws. I'm going to try to do this without removing the intake. The first thing that we want to do is disconnect these O2 sensors, and I have disconnected the negative terminal on my battery to get these done. But you're going to remove these wires that are just clipped onto the heat shield, slide them out of the clips, and then each of these black connectors, we're just going to unplug those so we can completely disconnect it. So go ahead and unplug both of your O2 sensors, and then we're going to begin removing the screws that are holding on the heat shield. I don't want to brag, but some of the previous owners helped me out with some weight reduction, so I only actually have 3 out of 5 of these screws, but you still should be able to access them all if you do have all of the screws with the intake in place. I'm doing that because I'm a little lazy, but if you do remove the intake, then of course it'll give you a lot more space and make the job a whole lot easier. Once you've got all the screws removed, slide out those wires from the clips, and then you should be able to slide the heat shield out of its location. Now, here are the two heat shields side by side. So obviously the BimmerNetwork one is much more substantial, where it actually covers the entire turbo to minimize any heat transfer. Now, cool thing is it has this clip on top of it. So this is for your O2 sensor wiring. So it kind of works the same way that these clips along the edge of the stock heat shield work to keep, your O2 sensor wiring out of the way. Now, I will say that a lot of people tell me I don't do enough comparisons with my big turbo car, so here's showing that it does not fit with a top mount turbo setup, but besides that, it should fit with pretty much any aftermarket hybrid turbo that fits in the stock location. So stock turbo, most if not all hybrid turbos should work with this, and it does have that slot in the middle and the clip on the side for your O2 sensor clearance. So let's go ahead and get this installed. Now, just taking a closer look at this little clip, you can see there's a tab that you can pull to open it up, and then you can slide your O2 sensor wire either through the top or the bottom, so whatever works best for you. And then what you can do is move the O2 sensors out of the way and slide in your heat shield. Now, it goes in a lot easier at an angle, especially if you have your intake still in place. But like I said, if you remove your intake, you'll have way more room to get this aligned. So you can kind of see me fighting with it a bit. But once you get it all lined up and put in place, then you can go ahead and put in one of the screws, and that will just allow it to hang so it won't move anymore. And these slots do give you a lot of room to align those screws with the holes on your cylinder head. So take your time and you should be able to get it on there. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and put the O2 sensor wire for the rear O2 sensor through that rear clip. So I just kind of slide it in and then clamp it down so it locks it in place. And then your upstream O2 sensor should be fitting through the slot in the middle of the heat shield. So get all that lined up, plug your O2 sensors back in, and then just kind of reinstall those 5 screws. Again, my car has 3 because fast, but you put in your screws and that will hold the heat shield back in place. And then here you can see what it looks like fully installed. So it literally covers up everything on the turbo. It covers the runners, it covers the hot side and the cold side, while keeping your O2 sensor wires up and out of the way so that they're protected. This is just like a really high quality looking kit overall. So can't wait to go and test this out. All right, guys, so we're back now that we've got the new heat shield installed. I did a couple more pulls. This is not like a super controlled test, obviously. I just kind of get on the highway, drive like I'm enjoying my car, and then we kind of stop at the same point and we'll take some more measurements. So let's see if any of the temperatures have changed now that we've installed the heat shield. All right, so let's try this again. Well, I can't even get to the turbo. Obviously, it's completely covered, but we can see what our heat shield is. Our heat shield's at 100. Towards the middle, it's closer to 160. So that seems pretty good. Let's see, our turbo's around 76, 75. See parts of our charge pipe. It's around 90. What about our turbo inlet? It's around 84. Let's see, O2 sensor 150, 140, and then the valve cover 125, and then the intake manifold around 95, 94. So as you guys see, the results basically speak for themselves. You know, pretty much all of the component temperatures were lower than they were with the stock heat shield. And that makes a lot of sense. You know, this aftermarket heat shield covers much more of the turbo to keep all of that heat contained down in the turbo and exhaust area. So you shouldn't get as much heat transfer to everything else in your engine bay. Also keep in mind, this is not like a super controlled test. You know, it was basically just replicating a regular commute, drive to work, something like that, you know. So I did some city driving, some highway driving. I did a couple pulls on the highway, about 15 minutes of driving before I took the measurements. But if you were actually racing your car or doing a track day, you know, 20 or 30-minute sessions of consistent laps, I would anticipate that all of those deltas would be even larger. So I'm a big fan of this product. I'm really excited to try this out as we get into this next racing season. Now, there are two things that I know a lot of you guys were asking me about. One was about spool. You know, some people thought that because it concentrates all the heat on the turbo, it'll increase the exhaust velocity, that will decrease your spool time. And I feel like it felt a little peppier, but that could definitely be a placebo. There's nothing really built into this design that's specific to trying to increase your spool. So just keep that in mind. That's not really the reason why you should buy it. But if you guys enjoy placebos, then definitely feel free to enjoy it the same way I did. The other thing that a lot of people asked about is, does this improve IATs? And in my logs, I did not see a big difference in IATs. Again, it wasn't super controlled. I couldn't do, you know, back-to-back 60 to 130s or anything. But driving around town and stuff, it seemed like IATs were relatively the same. The good news is that when I checked the intake manifold temperature, it was lower after installing the upgraded heat shield, which I'll talk about more in a future video. But I have found that the metal manifolds are more susceptible to absorbing and potentially heat soaking from the ambient heat in the engine bay. You know, that's just something that you don't really have to deal with when you have the stock plastic manifold. So again, I'll do a full comparison between the BimmerNetwork manifold, my RK manifold, and the stock one, and kind of share my thoughts after running those for a while. But that was something that I like to see, because again, that tells me that when I'm really pushing the car hard, the intake is not going to have as much heat to absorb, which should keep your temps more consistent and avoid any potential heat soak issues. So yeah, again, big thank you to BimmerNetwork for sending this out to me for testing. I'm excited to run it this year. I highly recommend it to anybody that plans on pushing their car on a stock or hybrid turbo setup. I will have a link down in the description where you guys can use my coupon code for a couple bucks off of your order. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.
Can I show the bolt?
Sure. Don't touch. Got it? Good job. Come here, show this screw. Hold it in front of the camera, but don't touch the camera. Just hold it right here.
Dad, can I hold the magnet?
There you go.